My favorite poem from the Poetry Foundation is Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks in his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but long for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Maya Angelou's poem describes two birds. One, a free bird enjoying the beauty of nature as it pleases, taking in the privilege of its freedom for granted. The other being a caged bird who is trapped to his enclosure, but copes and attempts to free itself through his voice. And there are two main metaphors within the poem. One being the free bird, a metaphor for white Americans, and the caged bird, a metaphor for African Americans, and their captivity in the social norms. Maya Angelou was a really outspoken African American woman during the civil rights movement and was an activist all throughout her life. And I think that's very obvious within this poem. It speaks of the oppression and the struggles that people of color have faced through history in the West. I think this is really obvious in the line, "The trade winds soft through the sighing trees." Here we have this gorgeous imagery brought with this S alliteration is a really beautiful image, but it also brings forth the idea of the silk trade routes to me. And I think when you think of silk trade routes, you think of all these treasures being passed back and forth, but underlying that, you think there was these trade routes were really prevalent for the slave trade, which I think is then represented in the caged bird stanza, where it says, "The caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream." Again, we have this S alliteration, but instead of this beautiful image, there's a really horrific, dark connotation to the words shout, scream. Yet at the end of the stanza, it is brought back to this power of the voice with, "So he opens his throat to sing." Again, to look at the privilege of the free bird, so white Americans. In the first stanza, the free bird is said, "He dares to claim the sky." And I think this is really the idea of colonization, where in the entitlement, really, of white colonizers to claim whatever they please. When I first read the poem, I thought the imagery really was gorgeous to me. This lyric poem that doesn't use meter and rhyme, as it's a free verse poem, to bring this musicality to it, but instead it's through diction and alliteration that Maya Angelou has these strong emotions within it, the juxtaposition of the two birds. But it also really made me think of my own privilege, that I go about every day often unaware of the benefits that I'm reaping, as the free bird does. It did make me think much more of my own privilege as a white woman. The poem, as I said, is free verse. It's 38 lines. divided into 6 stanzas. There's no rhyme scheme, but there are certain rhymes used to emphasize emotion, such as cage in line 9 and rage in line 11. There's also iambic dimeter and anapestic dimeter and a whole mix of meters because there's no set meter for the poem. I found the poem was grouped, it seemed, in 3 separate groupings. The first being the first and second stanza, contrasting the 2 birds, and they're each 7 lines. Then again, there's this contrast in the 4th and 5th stanza, each being 4 lines. And then we have the refrain stanzas. And this repetition just encourages the power of a voice and the will for freedom. Thank you.